Hi, welcome back to my channel and a new video today. I'm going to be ranking for you all of the new movie releases that I managed to go and see throughout April. And it's been just such a crazy month for me. I didn't get a chance to review all of these movies individually, so I figured I'd just make this one big ranking video and summarise all my thoughts for you on what I did manage to watch. So please do let me know down in the comments what you thought of these movies if you've seen them, and also please do leave me your recommendations for anything good that I might have missed. So getting into this now, we've got a pretty solid bunch of movies here, even the ones at the bottom. I would still go positive on, still good movies. So it's probably the best month, I think, for new releases so far this year. And of course, we've got loads more exciting stuff coming out over the summer. So getting into some really good films now. So we've got 7 movies to talk about here, so let's get into this list. So down at the bottom in number 7, we've got Scoop. And this was a Netflix film. It's the dramatisation of the events leading up to that car crash interview between the BBC and Prince Andrew. And I actually watched that interview when it was first broadcast, and it was an equal parts shocking and hilarious, just to see how deluded and out of touch he really was. Him and his team, to be honest. The fact that they all thought the interview went well, it's just like absolutely mind-boggling, just totally ridiculous. But if you're not that familiar with all the events surrounding this story and this interview, you will find this film engaging and very interesting and entertaining to watch, I've no doubt. And as I said, I did like it. There was just a couple of small things about it I wasn't as keen on. I mean, it didn't really bring that much new, I didn't think, to the story. You know, everything... all the very publicly documented details on this story, you know, you can read anywhere. There's nothing really new here that was covered, I don't think. And also as well, this was based on the book that Sam McAllister wrote, or the piece she wrote, because she was the main journalist, of course, that was the one to actually get this interview, and it's told from her perspective. And the way the movie kind of makes it out is that the BBC only had noble intentions about why they wanted to get this interview. You know, it's so the people can really see him for who he is, and it's important that they know and all of this. But in reality, there was no doubt at this point that Prince Andrew was guilty. You know, the fact there was so much evidence, the pictures of him going in and out of Epstein's house, the extended periods of time he was spending with him after he'd already been convicted. Like, everybody knew. And the reality is the BBC were desperate to get their viewing figures back up. You know, all the job losses and the cuts and everything like that. They do kind of cover that a little bit at the start, but that's the real reason they wanted to do this interview. And there's no, you know, it's very obvious that that's the case. Whereas I think they tried to muddy the waters a little bit there, which I wasn't so keen on. But no, it's still a good film. Yeah, pretty shocking. And as I said, if you don't know a lot about this whole story, it's be a very interesting watch. So definitely recommended you watch it. Number 6 is going to be Monkey Man. And don't get me wrong, I did really like this film. I don't like to say that I have it lower down on this list. I just really wanted to love this one. You know, I was really on this movie's side. You know, Dev Patel, he's a really talented guy. I'm really rooting for him because, you know, if anyone's around my age who grew up in Britain, you'll probably first have seen him in Skins. And just to see how far he's come in his career since then is just absolutely crazy. You know, I love the guy. And the fact that he directed, wrote this, acted in it, you know, it's a real passion project for him. So I really wanted it to be amazing. And the fact as well that it was backed by Jordan Peele. It had a great trailer. Everything was set for a win. And I do think there's a lot of good things about it. I think the action is amazing. I think, you know, because it's a revenge story. It's really about the story of this guy whose family have been killed, and he's kind of working his way slowly into this criminal underworld before finding the right time to make his move and exact his revenge. And, you know, the way the trailer has shown it, a lot of people have coined it as like the Indian John Wick, which I think is fair. Given how well choreographed the action, the fight scenes are and everything like that. It was really great to watch. I just felt like with this, there were a number of characters, especially the villains, were not that well established. Like, it wasn't that clear to me exactly who was responsible for what. So when you get to that final conflict at the end and he ends up coming face to face with the sort of spiritual leader who's the guy, the kind of the guy who stands like a level above in the hierarchy, above the political group who are responsible for that massacre in the village. When I first saw that guy, I have to be honest, it didn't register with me who he was. So I don't know if it was just I was tired that day because I'd seen 2 movies before it, but I just didn't feel like it was really clear enough establishing certain characters so that I really understood the conflict, understood who everybody was and what part they played in this whole thing. So I felt like that was a little bit confusing to me. And I think it's partly as well, it's because the movie is just so fast paced. It's almost disorientating at times as well, just how, it's lots of shaky cam, it's lots of fast cuts, it's quite trippy at times as well. So you can get a little bit... it takes a minute or two, I think, just for your brain to catch up with everything that's going on. So I didn't think that helped either. But I definitely do think that it's a movie that might change. I might change my opinion of the more I watch it. It might have just been that first time viewing. But again, it's a good movie. I still highly recommend you watching. It just wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. My number 5 choice is The First Omen. So this is a prequel to the original film. And I'm actually not going to go into too much detail here, just because this week I plan to do an Omen franchise ranking, as I went back through all the movies again, watched them all leading up to the release of this. So I'm going to talk about them all in that video and get a little bit more in depth with it. But not to spoil my thoughts there, but I really don't like the Omen sequels at all. So I wasn't particularly looking forward to this, but the movie really won me over. I think it does a really nice job of kind of recapturing that very sinister atmosphere and that sense of dread that the original classic had. I think it does that really well, kind of creates a nice atmosphere for an Omen film to take place. I think it's really well directed, it's well acted, and yeah, there's some kind of quite surprising, shocking scenes throughout it that I really liked. It's going to get obvious comparisons to Immaculate. The fact that we had these 2 creepy non-horror movies within like 2 weeks of each other. And when you watch them together, the first half of each of them are basically like the same movie. I was like, this literally just feels like I'm watching Immaculate again. So it took me a little bit of time to kind of ease into it. But overall, I do think this is the better of the 2. This is the better made film for sure. The ending of Immaculate is still kind of stuck with me. I quite liked that. But as a movie, this is definitely the better of the 2. So I really did quite enjoy this one. There was just a couple of little nitpicks I have with it. There's sort of like this twist reveal in the middle, which was so obvious. I didn't really like that the movie was treating it as a twist, and I didn't like the ending. Again, I'll get more into my thoughts when I talk about it in the Omen video, but they basically do this lazy thing where they're obviously trying to set up and make room for sequels if this movie does well, whereas the way this ends, it leads nicely into the events of the original film, and I would have loved for them to end it there, but they kind of do this little extra thing as well, which is like, so that there's another story going on that runs concurrently with the events of the original film, and it just felt like, you're clearly doing that just to potentially set up a sequel, whereas this movie being closed off as its own thing, just one and done, would have been way better. So it's definitely still though a film I'd recommend you watch, especially if you're a fan of that original Omen. My number 4 choice is Infested. So this is a new spider horror film. It's a French movie, and I believe it actually came out a few months ago. It said 2023 on the Letterboxd diary, so it's probably been out at a film festival already, but I know it has just recently come out on Shudder, which is where I watched it. And I didn't know anything about this. I saw the poster, saw a couple of good reviews for it, and gave it a go. And I'll say, for any of you who have a fear or a phobia of spiders, you have got no chance with this movie. I haven't even got arachnophobia, and my skin was crawling throughout the whole runtime of watching this. And the story here, it's about this young guy who lives in this rundown apartment complex, and he looks after all these sort of exotic species of creature, lizards, snakes, all that sort of stuff. And the store owner, he has this venomous spider, and he buys it and takes it home. And that night it manages to escape the tank that he's kept it in, and it starts multiplying, they start growing ridiculously large, and absolute chaos ensues. And I think the reason this movie works so well is it's set in this very claustrophobic environment, and just the way the characters are reacting to all of these situations just felt so realistic to me. It just feels like you're there with them. Like when they first start to realise that something's going wrong and they see one of these spiders and one of them's trying to catch it and it's sitting there still on the wall, and as he's trying to put a glass over it, you can see every time he tries to get it, they're all jolting, and you're doing that with them because you can really feel what it would be like to be there in that moment. So I thought it was very convincing how it was done. You know, the creature effects, all the puppet work. I don't even know if it's practical or CGI. You can't really tell the line here. All the effects work are amazing on these spiders, so they look horrendous. And yeah, they kind of use that plot device as well to the reason they can't leave that apartment block. It's kind of similar to if you've seen the Spanish film Wreck, where, you know, they find out there's a virus and then the authorities kind of quarantine them inside there. You know, the police have barricaded the place, won't let them leave. So they're all just stuck in this dimly lit, really nasty, run-down apartment place filled with these gnarly-looking spiders. And it's just, it's an absolute nightmare. And as I say, if you're someone who has a fear of spiders, I can't imagine how difficult this film would be to watch. So yeah, highly recommended if you like these kind of things. It's really, really good. You know, it's not the most ambitious film in the world. You know, it's basically Evil Dead Rise, Wreck, all those sort of movies just with spiders. But in terms of that concept and that story, you can't go wrong with this one. So yeah, highly recommended. So my number 3 choice is Abigail. And this is the brand new vampire movie from the guys at Radio Silence. And I have done a full-length review for this movie, so I'll leave a card to you that here if you want to hear all of my thoughts. But I just had such a good time with this movie. You know, it's a comedy horror. It's absolutely hilarious. It's got some great horror stuff, lots of gore, lots of carnage, and some really like fun and freaky moments throughout it. I just had such a good time with it. And you know, it's basically a heist gone wrong story where you get this crazy bunch of characters who are trying to earn all this money, kidnapping this girl who's the daughter of this rich, powerful guy. And it turns out that she's a vampire, and they're effectively all locked in this mansion over one night, getting taken out one by this little girl. And it's just, yeah, so entertaining to watch. The only thing I really wish they'd done was they shouldn't have given away the reveal that the young girl is a vampire. So this isn't a spoiler. In all the trailers, you see that she's a vampire. And it plays out a little bit strange because the first half of the movie, or the first half an hour rather, has a little bit of mystery about it where you don't really know the intentions of each of these characters. You know, who's really working with who. Is there something secret going on? And then obviously it's revealed to these characters that she's a vampire because us as the audience, because we already know that, there's something just, it just wasn't as exciting, I think. It would have been better if that had been hidden from us and if that had just come out of nowhere. I think that would have made it a really cool reveal to have, you know, at the point they brought it out in the movie. So it could have been a little bit better. And again, like I said with Infested, it's not, you know, it's not the most groundbreaking or the deepest film in the world, but if you want a good time at the movies, if you like these guys' films, you'll have a great time with Abigail. Number 2, I'm putting Challengers, and this is the last movie on the list that I saw. This is the latest release from director Luca Guadagnino. Hope I'm getting his name right there. But the new film with Zendaya and the two guys in this love triangle relationship for these 3 very competitive tennis players who are up and coming and want to go pro. And it's basically the drama surrounding how the relationships between these 3 all intertwines as they grow up to becoming these tennis players. And I absolutely loved all of the drama of this movie. I just think, you know, a lot of people are really loving this. It's getting glowing reviews. And whilst I don't think it's the best movie in the world, I think maybe some people are overhyping it just a little bit. I do think it's really well done, and it is really fun and intriguing to go along with. You can't help but get sucked into the drama. And again, it's all about you know, how competitive drive runs in certain people. You know, people who want to be brilliant and are so committed to one particular thing, the amount of drive you need. You know, I'm sure it's like this for a lot of other things in life, for sports, other kinds of games, where if you want to be the very best, you have to go to ridiculous levels that other people are not willing to go to. And it kind of shows you when you have a drive like that, how that can actually come over and into other places of your life as well, and interfere potentially with your relationships and all this sort of stuff as well. So I found all of that stuff just fascinating. And I think the main problem people will probably have is the fact that the three characters are unlikable, I guess, on paper. If you how you write these characters, they're not particularly likable. They're very toxic people, especially Zendaya's character. But they've just got a certain charm about all of them where you can't help but find them likable in some ways. You know, kind of the dynamic and the interactions between them, and you kind of get why they are certain ways and where they're coming from, but just seeing the dynamic between them makes it very interesting to me. I'm not one of those people that has to have characters that like completely line up with the way you think about things or the way you would deal with certain situations. I don't really feel that way. I like to see these different perspectives, and I thought this worked really well. You know, it's really tightly edited, the music's fantastic that was composed for it. And yeah, it gripped me, it pulled me in, and I wanted to see where it was going. Zendaya is obviously a massive draw to this movie. You know, she's hugely talented, and I think in a less capable actress's hands, it probably wouldn't work, just because at times how toxic her character really is. You think to yourself, why would these guys keep involving herself? But because she just has that charm about her, you kind of get why they are so obsessed with her, where they've basically fallen out with each other, these two guys, and how they keep getting pulled into these situations with her just because she has something about her that really, you know, you get the awe and why these guys are making some of the decisions they do. So Zendaya really is the kind of the glue, I think, that makes a lot of that work. So yeah, it's a good fun watch. I think the only thing I didn't really like about it is there's so many flashbacks in the movie, so it's telling basically the timeline of when they're growing up. I think it spans over about 13 years when they're kind of amateurs, all the way up to now where one of them is an actual professional. And it's kind of it flashes back to certain events that are relevant to these relationships as they go through, and it goes back and forth so many times it starts to get a little bit confusing. I thought, like, there's a moment where it goes back 7 years, and then a minute later it says 1 day earlier, and you're like, is that 1 day earlier in the 7 years? Was that 1 day behind today? Like, it gets a little bit confusing, especially because these actors are all like in their 30s, they all look exactly the same. They don't really there's not a great way to really make them look a lot younger, except from Zendaya at the start, but they look basically the same. So there are a few confusing moments where they keep jumping back and forward, and that can be a little bit jarring, I thought. But other than that, I thought the movie was great, and in the end, I thought it was a kind of a mixed thing, that the movie was actually a lot more tame than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a little bit more extreme, just given the movies that this director has worked on before as well. But I kind of liked how it turned out. You know, it's quite a light movie as well. Which is so it's very rewatchable. You know, it's fun and stuff like that. But I think the trailers led you to believe it was probably going to be a bit more extreme than it actually was, which would be good and bad for some people. But you know, the way this thing turned out fully, I think it really works, and it's definitely one I'll watch again. And my favourite movie from April is Civil War, the newest Alex Garland film. And again, I have done a full review for this movie. I really wanted to get my thoughts out on that, so I will leave a link so you can hear all of my in-depth thoughts about this movie. It's been an interesting one actually reading all the reviews coming out on this movie, because I've seen some arguments made for the fact that people do actually think it has a more political leaning. For people that don't know, this is what is said to be really an apolitical film. You know, it's about a civil war that's broken out in America, where you've got these different factions all fighting against each other, and you're following this very neutral perspective from a group of photojournalists who are trying to get this interview with the president before he is eventually kicked from office, whether he's killed, removed, or whatever it might be. And you're just seeing how basically a divided nation has turned into actual war on the ground, people fighting daily, killing each other, and you're kind of seeing these journalists document the horrors of all these events that are unfolding. So it has been interesting to see reviews. People were quite hard on it, basically saying that they felt like they wanted it to have more of a political leaning, and in some way the movie was not being bold enough, or you know didn't have the ballsiness to actually kind of go there and actually pick a side. And I really don't like that perspective. You know, the fact that Alex Garland, he has a very distinctive vision, I think, with his movies, with what he's trying to do, and the idea that he just was slightly scared to actually go there, so he kind of left it apolitical. It's just like, that's clearly not what he's trying to do with this movie. I don't really know what picking a side in terms of political ideology would have really added to this story, I don't think. So I do really disagree with that criticism, even though I do get what people are saying. It is interesting to see the cases some people are making around that, but for me personally, no, I think the movie really works. I really liked it, and I am interested to see this one again as well. It's just superbly directed. I love Alex Garland. I think he's got something about his movies. He just knows how to really grab you, really intrigue you with his stories, and some of the character dynamics and interactions. There's a particularly amazing scene with Jesse Plemons about halfway through, which you've seen in the trailers, which is just fantastic. A very tense scene. So a highly recommended movie, and easily the best one I think we've had throughout April. So that is my ranking for all of the movies I managed to go and see throughout April. Please do let me know all of your thoughts on my list of movies and the order I've put them in down below. Also, please consider subscribing to the channel if you've been enjoying my content. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.